The morning sun cast a golden glow over Kensington Palace as Prince William stood before the ornate mirror in his private chambers. His reflection showed a man who had grown into his royal destiny, shoulders squared with the weight of responsibility that would soon rest upon the entire family. Today was not just any day. It was the coronation, a moment that would be etched into history forever. Kate emerged from her dressing room, and William's breath caught in his throat. She moved with the grace that had captivated the nation since their university days, but today there was something different about her presence. The deep blue dress she wore seemed to shimmer with each step, perfectly complementing the sapphire tiara that had been carefully placed upon her chestnut hair. Her stylist had worked for hours to achieve the perfect balance between elegance and accessibility, ensuring she would represent the modern monarchy while honoring centuries of tradition. "You look absolutely radiant," William murmured, taking her hand in his. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on either of them. This coronation would mark a new chapter for the royal family, one where their children would begin to understand their roles in the grand tapestry of British history. Down the hallway, Princess Charlotte was having her own moment of preparation. At her age, she possessed a natural poise that often surprised the palace staff. Her dress, a miniature masterpiece of ivory silk with delicate embroidered roses, had been specially commissioned for this historic day. The young princess stood, perfectly still as her nanny adjusted the small tiara that crowned her golden hair, her eyes bright with excitement and curiosity about the grand ceremony ahead. Prince George, the future heir, was being helped into his formal attire by his personal attendant. The young prince had been preparing for this day through months of etiquette lessons and private conversations with his father about the significance of royal duty. His navy blue suit, tailored to perfection, made him look older than his years. There was a seriousness in his demeanor that spoke to his growing awareness of his future role as king. Little Prince Louis, the youngest of the Cambridge children, was perhaps the most animated of the group. His boundless energy had been carefully channeled by his caregivers, who understood that keeping a young child calm and presentable for such a significant event required patience and creativity. His miniature formal wear made him look like a small gentleman, though his infectious smile and bright eyes hinted at the playful spirit beneath the royal exterior. The family's preparation had begun weeks earlier, with detailed discussions about protocol, behavior expectations, and the historical significance of the day. Kate had spent countless hours with the children, using picture books and stories to help them understand why this day was so important, not just for their family but for the entire United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms. As the final touches were made to their appearance, the atmosphere in Kensington Palace was one of focused anticipation. Staff members moved with practiced efficiency, ensuring every detail was perfect. The security team had been briefed multiple times. The route to Westminster Abbey had been carefully planned and rehearsed, and contingency plans were in place for any unexpected situations. William glanced at his watch, a gift from his grandmother that he wore on all important occasions. The timing had to be precise. Their arrival at Westminster Abbey was scheduled to the minute, coordinated with broadcasters around the world who would capture every moment for millions of viewers. The weight of public expectation was enormous, but the family had learned to carry it with dignity and grace. Kate gathered the children around her for a final family moment before they would step into the public eye. She knelt down to their level, speaking in the gentle but firm tone that had become her signature as a mother. Her words were simple but meaningful, reminding them of their privilege to be part of such an historic day and their responsibility to represent their country with honor. The children listened intently, their young faces reflecting both excitement and the gravity of the occasion. Charlotte smoothed her dress and checked her reflection one more time, while George straightened his tie with the careful attention he had learned from watching his father. Louis, despite his youth, seemed to sense the importance of the moment and stood a little straighter. Outside, the sound of gathering crowds could be heard even through the palace's thick walls. Thousands of people had lined the streets of London, many arriving before dawn to secure the best viewing spots along the processional route. The excitement was palpable, with Union Jack flags fluttering in the gentle breeze and the cheerful chatter of royal enthusiasts from around the world. The royal convoy was being prepared in the palace courtyard, each vehicle polished to a mirror, shine and staffed with experienced drivers who had handled countless royal occasions. Security personnel conducted final checks on the route, ensuring that every possible precaution had been taken to guarantee the family's safety, while allowing the public to share in this momentous day. As the appointed time approached, William took one last look around the palace that had been their home for so many years. Soon everything would change. The coronation would mark not just a ceremony, but a transformation in their public roles and responsibilities. Kate joined him at the window, and together they watched the crowds gathering in the distance, a sea of faces eager to witness history in the making. The children were called to join their parents, and the family formed a small circle in the grand foyer of Kensington Palace. William spoke briefly about the honor they shared in representing the British people and the Commonwealth, while Kate reminded them to stay close together and follow the careful choreography they had practiced. The moment was both intimate and monumental, a private family preparing to step onto the world stage. The palace doors opened with ceremonial precision, and the Cambridge family stepped into the crisp morning air. The transformation from private family to public royals was immediate and striking. Cameras flashed like scattered stars, capturing every detail of their emergence from Kensington Palace. The children blinked in the sudden brightness but maintained their composure, years of careful preparation evident in their steady demeanor. William offered his arm to Kate, a gesture both gallant and practical given the length of her formal dress and the uneven cobblestones of the palace courtyard. She accepted with a smile that managed to be both gracious and genuine, the kind of expression that had endeared her to the British public from the moment she joined the royal family. Her posture was perfect, shoulders back and head held high, embodying the confidence that came from years of navigating public scrutiny. The royal convoy gleamed in the morning sunlight, a magnificent procession of vehicles that spoke to both tradition and modern security requirements. The lead car, where William and Kate would travel with their youngest son Louis, was a masterpiece of British automotive craftsmanship, its dark blue exterior polished to mirror perfection. The interior had been carefully appointed with child-friendly features hidden beneath the formal upholstery, ensuring that even the youngest royal could travel comfortably on this historic journey. George and Charlotte were escorted to their designated vehicle, where they would travel with their personal protection officers and a member of the palace staff who had become like a second mother to them over the years. The children moved with remarkable poise, Charlotte's hand resting lightly on her brother's arm in a gesture that mirrored their parents' formal positioning. Their training in royal protocol was evident, but so was their natural sibling bond, The convoy prepared to depart. Crowds of palace staff gathered at windows and doorways to wave farewell to the family they served with such dedication. Many had worked at the palace for decades, witnessing the children grow from babies into young royals. There were tears in several eyes as they watched their charges embark on this momentous journey, knowing that after today, nothing would quite be the same. The route from Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey had been transformed into a corridor of celebration. Barriers lined the streets, keeping the enthusiastic crowds organized while allowing maximum visibility for the millions who had come to witness this historic day. Union Jack bunting fluttered from every available lamppost and building, creating a river of red, white, and blue that stretched as far as the eye could see. The first glimpse of the royal convoy sent waves of excitement through the waiting crowds. People pressed forward against the barriers, phones and cameras raised high to capture the moment. Children sat on their parents' shoulders for better views, their faces painted with Union Jack designs and small flags clutched in their tiny hands. The atmosphere was electric, charged with the kind of national pride that only emerges during the most significant royal occasions. Inside the lit vehicle, Louis pressed his face to the window with wide-eyed wonder at the sea of people lining their route. His parents had tried to prepare him for the crowds, but the reality was overwhelming even for adults. Kate placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, pointing out interesting signs and decorations that well-wishers had created, turning the journey into an educational experience that would help him understand the love and support of the British people. William watched his youngest son's reactions with a mixture of pride and protective concern. He remembered his own first major public appearances as a child. The way the crowd seemed to stretch endlessly and the weight of knowing that millions of people were watching every move. But Louis seemed to be taking it all in stride, waving enthusiastically at children in the crowd who waved back with equal excitement. The procession moved at a stately pace, allowing maximum opportunity for the public to see their future monarchs, while maintaining the dignity appropriate for such a solemn occasion. Police motorcycles flanked the convoy, their riders trained specifically for royal protection duties. Overhead, helicopters circled at carefully controlled distances, some carrying security personnel and others broadcasting the historic journey to television networks around the world. Traffic throughout central London had been suspended for hours, creating an almost surreal atmosphere of calm on normally bustling streets. The only sounds were the gentle hum of the convoy engines, the distant cheers of crowds, and the occasional church bell tolling from the numerous historic churches that dotted their route. It was as if the entire city had paused to acknowledge the significance of this moment. Street vendors had positioned themselves at strategic locations with royal memorabilia, their stalls bright with commemorative items that would become treasured keepsakes for those fortunate enough to witness the coronation procession. Flags of the Commonwealth nations flew alongside the Union Jack, acknowledging the global significance of the ceremony and the family that would soon take their places in Westminster Abbey. As they progressed through the heart of London, passing landmarks that had witnessed centuries of royal history, the weight of tradition became increasingly apparent. These same streets had seen countless royal processions, from jubilant celebrations to solemn state funerals. Today's journey was adding another golden thread to the rich tapestry of British royal history. Kate found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this moment, from a middle-class girl in Berkshire to the future queen consort of the United Kingdom. The transformation seemed impossible even now, yet here she was, traveling through London with her husband and children toward a ceremony that would formally recognize their roles in the nation's future. The responsibility was enormous, but so was the honor. The children in the second vehicle were maintaining their composure beautifully, waving at appropriate moments and sitting with the straight-backed posture that had been drilled into them during countless etiquette lessons. Palace staff monitoring their journey through discreet communication systems reported that George and Charlotte were handling the attention with remarkable maturity, their natural grace enhanced by careful preparation and the confidence that came from loving, supportive parents. The ancient spires of Westminster Abbey came into view as the royal convoy rounded the final corner of their historic journey. The sight was breathtaking. The Gothic masterpiece stood like a sentinel against the clear blue sky, its stone walls bearing witness to nearly 1,000 years of British history. Scaffolding and elaborate decorations had transformed the Abbey's exterior into a grand theater fit for the most important ceremony in the realm. Thousands of specially invited guests were already seated within the Abbey's hallowed halls, their formal attire creating a tapestry of elegant colors beneath the soaring medieval arches. Representatives from every Commonwealth nation had traveled to London for this moment, along with heads of state, religious leaders, and distinguished citizens who had dedicated their lives to public service. The atmosphere inside was reverent, yet electric with anticipation. As the convoy approached the Abbey's west entrance, the crowds lining Parliament Square erupted in the loudest cheers of the day. These were the most dedicated royal watchers, many of whom had camped overnight to secure prime viewing positions for the family's arrival. Union Jack flags waved like a patriotic sea, and the sound of "God Save the King" began to rise spontaneously from different sections of the crowd. William felt his pulse quicken as the familiar facade of Westminster Abbey filled the car window. This was the church where he had married Kate over a decade earlier, where his grandmother had been crowned, and where countless generations of his family had marked the most significant moments of their lives. Today, his children would take their first formal steps into royal duty within these sacred walls. Kate smoothed Louis's hair one final time and checked that his miniature medals were properly positioned on his tiny chest. The youngest prince had grown quieter as they approached their destination, perhaps sensing the solemnity of the occasion or simply overwhelmed by the magnitude of the crowds. His mother's gentle touch seemed to reassure him, and he managed a small smile as she whispered words of encouragement in his ear. The convoy came to a precise stop at the Abbey's entrance, where a red carpet stretched from the street to the great doors. Palace guards stood at attention in their ceremonial uniforms, their presence adding to the grandeur of the moment while ensuring the family's security. Protocol officers checked their watches and adjusted their earpieces, coordinating the complex choreography that would guide the family through the next crucial minutes. George and Charlotte's vehicle arrived moments later, and the young royals emerged with the poise of seasoned diplomats despite their tender years. Charlotte's ivory dress caught the sunlight beautifully as she stepped onto the red carpet, while George's serious expression reflected his growing understanding of his future role. The siblings instinctively moved closer together, finding comfort in each other's presence amid the overwhelming grandeur of the occasion. The Abbey's bells began to toll, their ancient bronze voices carrying across London and announcing to the city that the royal family had arrived for the coronation ceremony. The sound was both majestic and deeply moving, connecting this moment to centuries of royal tradition, while marking the beginning of a new chapter in the monarchy's evolution. Archbishop Justin Welby appeared at the Abbey's entrance, resplendent in his ceremonial robes and wearing the expression of profound responsibility that befitted his role in the day's proceedings. As the spiritual leader who would conduct the ceremony, he carried the weight of tradition and the hopes of a nation. His warm smile as he greeted the family showed the personal relationships that existed beneath the formal protocol. Kate took William's offered arm, and together they began their measured walk toward the Abbey doors. Each step was choreographed and practiced, yet their natural grace made the formal procession appear effortless. Behind them, the children followed in order of age, their small hands clasped together in a gesture that spoke to their unity as siblings and their support for one another during this momentous occasion. The crowd's cheers reached a crescendo as the family paused at the threshold of Westminster Abbey. This was the moment that would be captured in countless photographs and replayed on television screens around the world for generations to come. William turned slightly to acknowledge the crowds, raising his hand in the familiar royal wave that had been perfected by generations of his family. Inside the Abbey, the assembled congregation rose as one when the great doors opened to admit the royal family. The ancient stones seemed to vibrate with the power of hundreds of voices joining in song, the music lifting toward the vaulted ceiling and creating an atmosphere of transcendent beauty. Sunlight streamed through the Abbey's magnificent stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the floor and illuminating the family as they began their processional toward the altar. Charlotte looked up in wonder at the soaring architecture above her head, her young mind trying to comprehend the scale and beauty of the building that would host this historic ceremony. The Abbey's choir, positioned in the ancient wooden stalls, sang with voices that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. The music wrapped around the family like a benediction, blessing their entrance into this sacred space. Prince Louis, despite his youth, seemed to understand the importance of walking quietly and maintaining proper decorum. His small hand reached for his mother's, and Kate accepted it with a gentle squeeze that provided reassurance without breaking the formal dignity of their procession. The gesture was subtle, but spoke volumes about the balance this modern royal family maintained between protocol and parental love. The scent of centuries-old stone mixed with fresh flowers and burning candles, creating an atmosphere that was both timeless and uniquely suited to this historic day. Every detail had been planned months in advance, from the precise timing of their entrance to the specific route they would take through the Abbey. Yet despite all the preparation, there was something magical about the moment that no amount of planning could manufacture. As they moved deeper into the Abbey, passing monuments to kings and queens who had come before them, the family carried with them the hopes and dreams of the British people and the Commonwealth nations. Their presence in this sacred space represented continuity and change, tradition and progress, the eternal challenge of maintaining relevance while honoring the past. The congregation watched in respectful silence, understanding that they were witnessing history in the making. The Cambridge family took their designated seats in the front row of Westminster Abbey, their positioning carefully planned to provide the best view of the coronation ceremony while ensuring they remained visible to the television cameras broadcasting the historic event to billions of viewers worldwide. The ancient wooden pews had been fitted with cushions bearing the royal coat of arms, a small comfort during what would be a lengthy and solemn ceremony. Charlotte sat between her parents, her small form dwarfed by the massive stone pillars that surrounded them. The young princess kept her hands folded in her lap, just as her etiquette instructor had taught her, but her eyes moved constantly around the abbey, taking in details that would stay with her for the rest of her life. The stained glass windows cast colored light across her face, and she seemed almost to glow in the ethereal atmosphere of the ancient church. George, seated to his father's right, maintained the serious expression that had become his trademark at public events. At his young age, he already understood that his behavior would be scrutinized and that his conduct reflected not just on his family, but on the institution of the monarchy itself. His posture was impeccable, shoulders straight and feet flat, on the floor, embodying the royal bearing that had been carefully cultivated through years of patient instruction. Little Louis, positioned between Kate and Charlotte, swung his legs slightly as children do when seated in chairs too large for them. However, he kept the movement subtle and quiet, showing remarkable restraint for someone his age. His mother occasionally placed a gentle hand on his knee, not to stop him but to provide comfort and connection during the overwhelming ceremony. The abbey filled with the sound of ancient hymns as the ceremony officially began. The royal chapel, choir, comprising some of the finest voices in the United Kingdom, lifted their songs toward the vaulted ceiling with such power and beauty that many in the congregation were moved to tears. The music seemed to connect the present moment with centuries of royal tradition, creating a bridge between the past and the future that the Cambridge children represented. William found himself reflecting on his own childhood experiences during similar royal ceremonies. He remembered sitting in these same pews as a young boy, struggling to understand the complex rituals while trying to maintain proper behavior under the watchful eyes of the nation. Now, watching his own children navigate the same challenges, he felt a deep sense of pride mixed with protective concern for their well-being. Kate's training as a mother and a royal consort was evident in the way she managed her children throughout the ceremony. Without drawing attention to herself, she provided subtle guidance and reassurance, ensuring they remained comfortable while maintaining the dignity expected of their positions. Her ability to balance maternal instincts with royal protocol had been developed through years of experience and careful observation of royal traditions. The processional began with representatives from every corner of the Commonwealth, their varied traditional dress creating a stunning display of cultural diversity. Within the unity of the realm, leaders from Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and dozens of other nations processed past the Cambridge family, each acknowledging them with respectful nods that recognized their future roles in the Commonwealth's leadership. As the ceremony progressed, through its ancient rituals, the children remained remarkably attentive. Charlotte whispered occasional questions to her mother, who provided brief explanations without disrupting the solemn atmosphere. George watched every movement with the intensity of someone trying to memorize details for future reference, understanding that one day he might be the central figure in such a ceremony. The moment arrived for the congregation to pledge their allegiance, and the Cambridge family rose with dignity and grace. Their voices joined with hundreds of others in the traditional words that had been spoken at coronations for generations. Even young Louis attempted to follow along, his childish voice barely audible, but his effort touching to those seated nearby. Throughout, the Abbey television cameras captured every moment for the global audience that exceeded 1 billion viewers. The Cambridge family's behavior was being observed not just by those present in Westminster Abbey, but by people in remote villages, bustling cities, and everywhere in between. The weight of the scrutiny was enormous, yet they carried it with the natural grace that had made them beloved figures around the world. The Archbishop's voice echoed through the ancient stones as he spoke the sacred words of the coronation ceremony. Each phrase carried centuries of meaning, connecting the present moment to an unbroken chain of royal tradition that stretched back through the mists of British history. The children listened with varying degrees of comprehension, but all seemed to sense the profound importance of what they were witnessing. During the most solemn moments of the ceremony, the Abbey fell into complete silence, broken only by the Archbishop's voice and the soft shuffle of ceremonial movement. In these quiet interludes, the Cambridge family's presence seemed to anchor the ceremony in the present, while honoring the past. Their youth represented hope for the future, while their careful attention to protocol demonstrated respect for tradition. Kate noticed that Lewis was growing tired, his small body beginning to sag against the pew despite his best efforts to maintain proper posture. She discreetly adjusted his position, providing support without drawing attention to his struggle. Her maternal instincts were perfectly balanced with her understanding of royal expectations, ensuring her youngest child's comfort while maintaining the dignity of the occasion. The music swelled again as the choir launched into another ancient hymn, their voices filling every corner of the abbey with sound that seemed to lift the spirits of everyone present. Charlotte closed her eyes and listened to the beautiful melodies, her young heart moved by music that connected her to generations of royal ancestors who had sat in these same pews during their own historic moments. As the ceremony reached its crescendo, the Cambridge family remained perfectly composed, their presence adding to the grandeur of the occasion while embodying the future of the monarchy. They represented continuity and change, tradition and progress, the eternal challenge of maintaining relevance while honoring the sacred trusts that had been passed down through generations of British royals. The climactic moment of the coronation ceremony arrived as the newly crowned monarch processed through Westminster Abbey, the ancient crown gleaming with centuries of royal history. The Cambridge family rose with the entire congregation, their movement synchronized and graceful as they prepared for the recessional that would mark the end of the historic ceremony. The weight of what they had witnessed was evident in their expressions, a mixture of awe, pride, and deep respect for the traditions they had inherited. William adjusted his ceremonial robes and offered his arm to Kate, just as they had practiced. During the countless rehearsals leading up to this moment, their children fell naturally into formation behind them, George and Charlotte walking side by side with Lewis between his parents, the family unit presenting a picture of unity and dignity that would be remembered for generations. The Abbey's bells began to ring out across London, their bronze voices proclaiming to the world that the coronation ceremony had been completed successfully. The sound carried across the Thames, through the ancient streets of Westminster, and into the hearts of millions who had gathered to celebrate this historic day. The pealing bells seemed to bridge the gap between the sacred ceremony inside the Abbey and the joyful celebrations waiting outside. As the royal family began their measured procession toward the Abbey's great doors, they passed beneath the magnificent stained glass windows that had witnessed countless royal ceremonies throughout British history. The afternoon sun streamed through the ancient glass, casting rainbow patterns across their path and creating an almost mystical atmosphere that enhanced the solemnity of their departure from this sacred space. Charlotte looked back once at the altar where the coronation had taken place, her young mind trying to process the magnitude of what she had experienced. The ceremony had been unlike anything in her previous experience, combining ancient ritual with modern pageantry in a way that spoke to both tradition and progress. Her parents had prepared her well, but the reality of witnessing such a historic moment was overwhelming even for adults. George walked with the measured pace that had been drilled into him during etiquette lessons, his young face serious with the weight of understanding that he had witnessed something that would be talked about for the rest of his life. As the future heir to the throne, he seemed to grasp intuitively that this ceremony represented the kind of responsibility he would one day bear, and his demeanor reflected both the honor and the burden of his royal destiny. The congregation remained, standing as the royal family processed past them, many dabbing at their eyes with handkerchiefs as the emotional impact of the ceremony touched even the most sophisticated attendees. Representatives from around the world watched with respectful attention, understanding that they were witnessing not just a British ceremony, but a moment that would resonate throughout the Commonwealth and beyond. Kate maintained her composure, beautifully, her training in royal protocol evident in every step she took through the Abbey. Years of public appearances had prepared her for moments like this, when the eyes of the world were upon her family, and every gesture would be analyzed and remembered. Her natural grace had been enhanced by careful preparation, creating the perfect balance between accessibility and majesty. Louis, despite his youth, seemed to understand that this was a special moment requiring his best behavior. His small hand, remained securely in his mother's grasp as they walked through the abbey, his eyes wide with wonder at the grandeur surrounding him. The youngest Cambridge child had exceeded all expectations for deportment and attention, proving that even very young royals could rise to significant occasions when properly prepared and supported. As they approached the abbey's entrance, the sound of the crowds outside grew louder, penetrating even the thick stone walls of the ancient church. The cheers and applause created a wave of excitement that seemed to energize the royal family, reminding them of the joy their presence brought to the British people and visitors from around the world who had gathered to share in this historic celebration. The great doors of Westminster Abbey opened before them, revealing a sea of faces and a riot of color from the thousands of flags being waved by the enthusiastic crowds. The transition from the solemn interior of the abbey to the joyful celebration outside was startling. Like stepping from a cathedral into a carnival, both experiences equally meaningful in their own way. Cameras flashed like stars as the royal family emerged into the afternoon sunlight, their formal attire gleaming in the natural light after the filtered illumination of the abbey interior. The children blinked in the sudden brightness but maintained their composure, years of training evident in their ability to adapt quickly to changing circumstances while maintaining royal dignity. The crowds erupted in the loudest cheers of the day as the Cambridge family appeared at the abbey entrance. Union Jack flags waved frantically, and voices raised in patriotic songs that seemed to lift the very air with their enthusiasm. Children on shoulders pointed excitedly at the young royals, creating connections across generational lines that spoke to the enduring appeal of the monarchy. William paused at the threshold of the abbey, allowing the crowd's enthusiasm to wash over his family like a benediction. This was the moment when the formal ceremony inside the church connected with the popular celebration outside, creating a bridge between the sacred and the secular aspects of royal tradition. His children stood beside him, small figures against the massive backdrop of Westminster Abbey, yet commanding the attention of thousands. The royal convoy waited in perfect formation, each vehicle polished and prepared for the journey back through London's historic streets. The return trip would be different from their arrival, marked by the knowledge that they had all participated in one of the most significant ceremonies in British royal history. The children had acquitted themselves with honor, and their parents felt justifiable pride in their behavior throughout the lengthy and demanding ceremony. Kate looked out at the sea of happy faces and felt a surge of gratitude for the warmth and support shown by the British people. The crowds represented every corner of society, from elderly veterans wearing their service medals to young families with children barely older than Louis. Their presence demonstrated the continuing relevance of the monarchy and the affection felt for the royal family across all demographics and backgrounds. The journey back to Kensington Palace took the royal family through streets transformed by celebration. Where the morning had seen orderly crowds respectfully observing their arrival, the afternoon brought pure jubilation as thousands of people celebrated the successful completion of the coronation ceremony. Street parties had spontaneously erupted at various points along their route, with Union Jack bunting stretched between buildings and the sounds of celebration filling the air. Inside the lead vehicle, the Cambridge family finally allowed themselves to relax slightly after the intense focus required during the ceremony. Kate removed her gloves and placed a gentle hand on Louis's forehead, checking that he wasn't overwhelmed by the heat and excitement of the day. The youngest prince leaned against his mother's shoulder, his energy finally beginning to flag after hours of maintaining perfect royal behavior. William loosened his ceremonial collar slightly and smiled at his wife with genuine pride. They had all performed beautifully throughout the day, but the real test had been their children's ability to handle such a significant public appearance with grace and dignity. George and Charlotte, traveling in the vehicle behind them, had exceeded every expectation, demonstrating poise that would have been remarkable in adults, let alone children their age. The crowds lining their return route seemed even larger than those who had witnessed their departure from Kensington Palace. That morning, word of the children's exemplary behavior during the ceremony had somehow spread through the masses, creating additional excitement about seeing the young royals who had conducted themselves with such maturity during the historic event. Phone cameras captured every moment of their passage, creating thousands of personal mementos of this extraordinary day. As they passed Buckingham Palace, The family could see preparations already underway for the evening's celebrations. Palace staff moved with practiced efficiency, arranging for the festivities that would mark the culmination of the Coronation Day. The sight reminded William and Kate that their day was far from over, with additional public appearances scheduled and family celebrations planned well into the evening. George and Charlotte's protection officer reported via radio that both children remained alert and well-behaved, though Charlotte had asked several thoughtful questions about the ceremony they had witnessed. Her curiosity about the historical significance of the rituals showed a maturity that pleased her parents, while George's quiet observation and careful attention to protocol demonstrated his growing understanding of his future role. The approach to Kensington Palace revealed hundreds of well-wishers gathered at the gates, many holding signs with messages of congratulation and appreciation for the family's service to the nation. Palace security had managed the crowds expertly, ensuring safety while allowing maximum opportunity for the public to express their affection for the royal family. The atmosphere was festive rather than chaotic, testament to British crowd management and the respect shown by royal supporters. As the convoy entered the palace grounds, the family could finally breathe easily for the first time in hours. The private space beyond the gates provided a sanctuary where they could process the emotions and experiences of the day without the constant awareness of public scrutiny. The familiar surroundings of their home offered comfort after the grandeur and formality of Westminster Abbey. Palace staff lined the entrance to welcome the family home, their faces reflecting the pride felt by everyone associated with the royal household. Many had worked for hours to ensure every detail of the day proceeded smoothly, from the youngest page to the most senior advisors. Their smiles and quiet applause showed genuine affection for the family they served and satisfaction in a job exceptionally well done. Kate helped Louis from the car, while William attended to the protocol of acknowledging the staff who had made the day possible. The youngest prince was clearly tired but managed to wave at the familiar faces of palace employees who had become extended family over the years. His resilience throughout such a demanding day had surprised everyone, proving that even very young children could rise to extraordinary occasions when properly supported. Inside the palace, the family gathered in their private sitting room for a few moments of quiet reflection before the evening's obligations began. The contrast between the public grandeur of the day and the intimate warmth of their family space was striking. Here they could simply be parents and children rather than representatives of the crown, at least for a brief respite. Charlotte immediately began recounting her favorite moments from the ceremony, her excitement spilling over now that she was in the safety of home. Her observations were surprisingly sophisticated, focusing on details of music and architecture that showed how carefully she had been paying attention despite her young age. Her enthusiasm was infectious, bringing smiles to her parents' faces after hours of maintaining formal composure. George remained characteristically thoughtful, processing the day's experiences internally before sharing his thoughts. When he finally spoke, his comments revealed a deep understanding of the ceremony's significance and his own future connection to such events. His maturity was both impressive and slightly concerning to his parents, who wanted him to enjoy childhood while preparing for his eventual responsibilities. As the afternoon light began to fade, the family prepared for the evening's festivities, knowing that their public duties for the day were not yet complete. However, they faced these additional responsibilities with confidence earned through their successful navigation of one of the most important days in recent royal history. The coronation had been a triumph, not just for the monarchy, but for this particular family who had represented the institution with such grace and dignity. William looked around at his wife and children, feeling a profound sense of accomplishment mixed with gratitude. They had all risen to meet the enormous expectations placed upon them, conducting themselves in a manner that honored both their royal heritage and their roles as modern representatives of the crown. The day had tested their preparation, their composure, and their unity as a family, and they had emerged stronger. Kate began the process of helping the children transition from their formal coronation attire to more comfortable evening wear, though still maintaining the elegance required for their upcoming public appearances. The physical act of changing clothes seemed to symbolize the shift from the morning's solemn ceremony to the evening's celebrations, marking different phases of this historic day. Louis, now refreshed by their brief time at home, showed renewed energy for the festivities ahead. His successful participation in the coronation ceremony had proven that even the youngest members of the royal family could contribute meaningfully to significant state occasions when given proper support and preparation. His parents exchanged proud glances as they watched him interact naturally with palace staff, showing the easy confidence that would serve him well throughout his royal life. The evening ahead would bring different challenges and opportunities, from formal receptions to public appearances on the palace balcony. But having successfully navigated the most demanding part of the day, the Cambridge family approached these remaining obligations with the satisfaction of duty well performed, and the knowledge that they had participated in creating lasting memories for the nation and the Commonwealth. As the sun set over London, casting golden light through the palace windows, the royal family stood together in their private quarters, united by the shared experience of one of the most significant days in British royal history. They had witnessed the continuation of traditions stretching back centuries, while simultaneously representing the modern face of the monarchy, bridging past and future in a way that only they could accomplish. The sounds of continued celebration could be heard from the streets beyond the palace walls, a reminder that their participation in this historic day had brought joy to millions of people around the world. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and responsibilities, but tonight belonged to the triumph of tradition, the strength of family, and the promise of a royal legacy that would continue through the generations represented by the three young Cambridge children who had conducted themselves with such remarkable poise and dignity throughout this extraordinary day.